All right, David Ellefson, welcome back to the Talk Toomey podcast, man. How's it been?
It's been a season. I'm not gonna lie. It's been an interesting turn of events, but I'm stronger as a result. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, Josh. It's the first time I've taken a vacation in 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I've taken family vacations, but I'm usually in one phone, and then there's emails. It's
Right.
like a work vacation, or. I think it's hard. There's people like me who are wired that it's like we just, we wake up and go, to wake up and then slow down, and I'm going to sit on the mountaintop and meditate and discover myself. It's like, that is not how I'm wired.
Right.
I don't think it's, my dad wasn't like that. So I don't think it's in the Ellefson men to do that. We kind of get up and go. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes life throws a card at you where you just hit a wall and you're forced to just stop everything. And you know, that this is one of those seasons, that did that, and you're just forced to just kind of sit still and pull the car over and put on the blinkers and the flashing lights, and you're on the side of the road, and then you kind of get in the slow lane and kind of move. I'm kind of like one lane over from the slow lane now. I'm kind of in the middle, which is actually fine. Honestly, I'm enjoying it. I was in the fast lane, just blazing for so many years. Really since 2002. Just go, go, go. I mean, I had a young family. I had to hurry up and kind of get a new job and career path in place at that time, and one thing I've noticed though, crisis always presents opportunity, and so it's sort of like you can either sit around and blame everybody, it's their fault, or you go, well, all right, what's my part in this? Let's get to that, and now you can build on that and move past and get on with it, and then you don't carry with you sort of the bitterness and blaming, and you can go, well, I don't know. I think being free, that's the main thing, is be free. And you can be sort of in the prison of yourself, or you can kind of unlock the door and walk out, so that's kind of where I've been with everything. And I feel like I'm on the other side of that now. And, so it's good. So, got some new music and some new stuff. So it's fun to just kind of get back out and get rocking again.
Were you nervous to get back out in public with I know you've been doing the horror convention stuff and just kind of, like you said, dipping your toe into it, the kind of the reaction to you kind of coming back out? Were you nervous to see what people were going to say?
100%, dude. Back in May, I was nervous to go to Starbucks, it's just, I went way off the radar, and I just shut everything down. And I sought, some counseling and therapy just to have I'm in the recovery community, and thank God they were, very supportive, of course, because that's what we do. And, that was suggested, said, look, man, go, just see, I had a guitar tech, John Goodwin, Gumby. He was Nick Menza's friend. And I remember back in 1989, I just left my second rehab for drugs and alcohol, and he came over to my apartment and he says, "What the hell are you doing?" He goes, "You need to go back to rehab now." He goes, "Get in my car, let's go." And he said something to me. He said, "Getting help is a sign of strength, not weakness." And I'll never forget that, we're, there's a group that I kind of attend, for recovery and stuff. And I was in Tel Aviv, Israel of all places. And a guy from South Africa, he goes, people always say God never gives you more than you can handle. He goes, I found that God always gives you more than you can handle, because you're supposed to rely on him for the strength. And I was like, wow. That was very counterintuitive to sort of the platitudes we tell people when they're going through problems or grief or stuff, is, oh, God never gives you more than you can handle. You can get through this, believe in yourself. It's always this sort of pick yourself up by your bootstraps kind of stuff. And, and then these, big challenges come along in life, as we all have, whatever they are. You're forced to go, all right, this is bigger than me. This is more than I can deal with. So, to go get seek, outside help, just to go, what the fuck, man? I don't know. A bomb just went off and I'm fucking bleeding and my house burned down and there's shrapnel everywhere. And like, what the hell, that is I'm glad to have that, but it's that I had that, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, man. A lot of people are, they would text and send me stuff like, I'm like, would you please stop sending me this shit? It's like, you're not helping me. You think you're my friend, and if you want to be my friend, just fucking either leave me alone or be supportive, and so that, I think, didn't help, because it's, the news frenzy that happens around this stuff. And I think it's more for their fun than mine. I'm like, look, I'm glad I was able to provide such entertainment for everybody. Couple of weeks of, some top news stories. You're welcome. And that gets shitty, the stuff that gets pulled and pulling my family into it. And I mean, just, that Don Henley song, Dirty Laundry, was always in my mind all summer, I love that song anyway, but just what it's about. Like, the only good news is bad news, and if it bleeds, it leads. I think that's another one they use in the newsrooms, If they're bleeding and half dead, that's the lead story on the 6 p.m. news, So, but look, it's rock and roll, man. You wanted to be a rock star, you wanted to be a musician, you wanted to be out there doing it, and when you're in our line of work, probably you too. I hate to tell you, it's like, if you're at all in the spotlight. Right. Be ready for the dark shades of the spotlight to swoop over you at times too, because it does, and that's the reality of it. Is and that's the thing, is I think all of us, we all look at someone else's life and go, God, wouldn't it be great to be them? And it's like, man, if you only knew what was going on in their life, you'd probably gladly take all your problems back. You know what I mean? And go, yeah, that doesn't look as good as I thought when it's behind the scenes, and we're all human. We've all got stuff. It's and I think that's what happens with these things, is there's these, there are these moments that your humanness comes out, and it's like, it's we all have our idols, we all have our heroes, but lo and behold, they bleed too, they're human, and that's kind of the way it goes. So, hey, I had mine. I've been through them before, getting sober years ago. 2002, Megadeth disbanded. That was a big thing for a couple of years, the disbanding and the re-coming back together. So, I've already kind of been through this, so you kind of know, well, been down this road before, seen this movie. The ending's never as bad as you think it's going to be. It feels like the sky's falling and it's all over, and it's not, and it's just, it's a season, that's all it really is. It's just, I grew up on the farm, so it's the right. 4 seasons, you plant in the spring, you tend in the summer, you harvest in the fall, and then you kick back and watch TV in the winter, and let the snow pass. So, I think that helps to kind of just, take it like that and just go, well, not forever, just for now.
So were you, you said your friends were sending you things. Were you seeing the memes? Were you going online, seeing comments and things like that? Or did you just truly have to just shut it down?
I shut everything down. And that's why a couple people, I got a new phone number. I'm like, that life is, I can set that life to the side. And, they were just trying to be helpful, just like, brother, hope you're okay. And, people from all around the world, were just coming, to their credit, they were just coming around me, just, love up on me and support me and help me. They really were, from everywhere, all walks of life, and, musicians and, industry people and, friends from church and recovery community. I mean, everywhere, and so that was helpful for sure, because I tell you what, I know now what, like, some kid that, has their social media handle, and, their 40 friends suddenly turn on them and then bully the hell out of them. I can understand why they go to some dark place. Their world, that virtual world, is their reality. That is a reality that they live in. That's almost bigger than this world outside, reality, and like I said, I was going to Starbucks and no one was like, gaslighting me or, going, oh my God, they're just like, David, your coffee's ready. You know what I mean? It was no big deal, and I think that was a serious kind of, wake up moment was, it's like, all this shit that happens on social media. It's like a fake reality, man. It's not real. It's just bullshit. And, when you step out of that and you leave the house, you go, the sky's not falling. Everything's fine out here. And no one really gives a shit. And, it's, and that is the reality. It shit just blows over and that's it and it's done. But I think if you're, of a certain, probably demographic, that you've grown up with, that is your reality, and so when that world implodes or turns against you, it's like, oh my God, I have no friends, my life is over. And I can understand why some people, again, go to some dark places. So I'm excuse me, I'm glad I had see, there's the COVID. Apologies about that. But yeah, so anyway, better to live in reality than in virtual reality. Let's just say that,
One quick, I guess, Megadeth related question. Do you have the version of the new Megadeth record that you recorded, at least for yourself?
I don't know, okay, because it was all in sort of, Dropbox and all that kind of stuff. So, we don't take anything out of it. You always leave it in there.
Right.
Just sort of, that's the professional acumen. So no, I do not. I don't have a copy of it.
I didn't know if you had some rough mixes for the car or anything like that.
No. They weren't mine to have. Again, they belong to Universal Records. So this is their property. They paid for it. It's their property.
Well, the one thing I saw, your guitarist Drew Fortier at Rockin' Pod, and I was talking to him back then about, the one thing that you've kind of done over the years is you've done everyone's podcast. Like I don't think there's a music podcast out there that you have not been on yet. Yeah. And you might have even been some of the show's biggest guests ever. So I think you've built up like this cachet with so many people that I think in the long run, I think we'll all end up being in your corner. And I think you're going to come out on this on the other side much better had you just been a dick to everybody.
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you for saying that too, because, that was my attitude. Look, we all start at the bottom. Every one of us, we all start at the beginning. And, people would hit me up and to do, originally it was, joesmetal.net, whatever website, and I still do it. I email questions over. I'll bang them. I just did one yesterday, banged out questions and sent them back over. And, look, because we live in this, virtual world here, these things tether out across the internet and some of the bigger news sites pick them up. And, look, if I can help joesmetal.net get in the game, and
right,
he's not a creep and he does some actual decent reporting. The guys that are just looking to start problems and stir the pot, I definitely stay away from them. I mean, look, they're out there, so it's just part of what we do. But especially the people that are just trying to get a foothold, I have tried to be gracious to them. I've tried to use maybe my notoriety and that to help them get in the game, because I was that guy once, I was that guy, just wanted to kind of be in the room where all the action was. So I get it. I totally get it. And you're right, man, the last couple of years, especially with like the Ellefson solo stuff. Oh my God. I was like I'd do 3 of these a day. In fact, leading up to kind of when all this shit went down in May, I was like, oh my God. It's like every morning I'd wake up and just go, I'd look at this sort of my day sheet from the publicists and the radio people, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's 3 today, and I got to get out of the house for an hour and get back, and you know what I mean? So it was like full time. I mean, it was like full time David Ellefson, and honestly, I was done talking about me. I'm like, I'm sick of talking about that guy. Like, I should go play golf or something. Do something besides be in the business of me. You know what I mean? Because and look, lo and behold, look, it happened. Then I got 6 months off. So, but yeah, it's funny because Drew, he's been a really wonderful friend. And for the last couple of years, yeah. And has really just kind of been there as a buddy. We wrote a book together. He, of course, was working on the Dwellers movie. and I kind of pushed him to, like, set some deadlines. Like, hey, let's do this. We appeared at the Mad Monster Horror Convention in February over in Charlotte, North Carolina. And they had invited me out to their convention to appear as a celebrity in, I think it was September of 2020. They're kind of the first convention to try to come back online. And so I did. And that was really cool. And it was fun. And it was nice to see that it could work and people weren't getting sick. And so they, Eben and those guys have been very gracious to me. And they reached out to me too. And they said, brother, we're in the celebrity business. We don't give a shit about this stuff happening. It's like, we really don't care, so they were very kind. So, we got to, sort of put a downbeat of February 20th, I think it was, when we, appeared at Mad Monster. And that sort of put a stake in the ground of, okay, this train's leaving the station. We're getting this movie going now. Our book had come out December 2020, I think it was, or November, something like that, November, December. And so, just kind of keep things moving. And it's funny with the Lucid record, because we actually had been working on that. We started that last year, mid-2020. Kind of took most of the year to just sort of get it written and recorded and got it mixed by earlier this year. I think we kind of got the mixes done. And, assuming I was going to be on a different schedule this year, we kind of set October at, mid-October as the release date for that. So despite everything, we kept everything on its release schedules. October 12th was the Dwellers release. October 15th was the Lucid. And we kept, just kept everything on schedule. But back in August, Drew was at, I think it was Crypticon, Kansas City horror convention, and there were a lot of fans. I was set to appear there, and I just said, man, I need a little time off, so I pulled back on that one. And I hate canceling things, man. I fucking hate it. And so I had to. I just needed the time to just chill, and because I wasn't ready to come out of the house yet, like you'd asked earlier, I wasn't there yet. But he goes, brother, the coast is clear. It's all good. Like your fans are here. They want to see you. They're asking about you. Half of them don't even know you're not in Megadeth anymore. So it's like, just get out here. They've got their Peace Sells records they want signed. And says, all right. So, it was that. So September was kind of the coming out party, if you will, to just sort of, start dropping our singles for the Lucid and start kind of warming that up. And then we did Crypticon Minneapolis, and last week we did Fort Wayne. Next week we're going to go out to Chiller, which is cool, and actually that's why I reached Eddie Trunk. I said, hey, I know you've been at Chiller, I'm going to be there, blah, blah, blah. And then that kind of led to us doing a chat this week, which was nice. Eddie was very gracious. He actually hit me on text right away too, just as a friend. I've known Eddie for a long time.
Yeah.
And so he was very kind and just, supportive to me as a friend first and foremost, so, that was kind of nice to just sort of have a platform with him this week to kind of walk down the whole thing, sort of clear the air, put all that crap behind us, and just let's get moving forward now in music and the stuff. The whole reason we're here in the first place, is because we make music and do movies and do creative stuff. That's the whole reason we're even here,
Yeah, I mean, between movies, coffee, and metal and everything else, I mean, you were definitely going high speed down a one-way track there for a little while. So, I mean, like I said, like you said, it must be nice to just kind of sit back and breathe for a second.
Yeah, and it is, and sometimes you're just on that thing. And look, and part of it is, we know in our business, our line of work, you strike while the iron's hot. You know what I mean? Because when you're hot, you're hot. Go for it. Take advantage of the opportunities that are there, and yet at the same time, it is easy to just sort of get on this treadmill you can't get off, and then one day someone hits the emergency stop and you're flying off the treadmill through the window. You're like, what the hell? But so it's again, it provided some opportunities for growth, to just some introspective reflection, if you will, and just kind of realigning first things first, and kind of putting some things in order. And I have, man. I've played on so many records. I've participated with so many, because I love doing that. I mean, I love doing that. I think in the first, the first 20 years of Megadeth, there was no opportunity to do anything else, and we don't want to. We were building the beast.
Right.
And then when the thing disbanded in 2002. All of a sudden that was one of those emergency stop treadmill moments. You go flying through the window. You're like, what the hell just happened? So that forced me to recorrect my course in life and start really being open to new things. And I got this job working for Peavey. I was running their artist relations department. It was interesting with that because, as the rock star, everyone serves you. Everyone comes to you. They're at your sort of beck and call of everything that you do, and that's just kind of how the environment is set up. And so when I was working for Peavey, suddenly I'm the servant,
Right.
And I remember like at NAMM, Peavey was certainly one of the big players, in the world, and had a huge footprint with their booth at the NAMM show, and being there, wearing the new shirt, that said Peavey on it, and working for them, serving artists, serving the artist community. I'm glad I was sober. I was glad that I'd grown up in the recovery community since, when I got clean in 1990 when I was 25 years old. So I'd kind of learned how to grow up and be a bit of an adult. I had a friend one time, I asked him, I said, man, I got this issue. What should I do? And he said, I don't know. What would an adult do? You know what I mean? And it's like, wow, that's a good question. What would a grown up do right now? Because, we live in this, especially rock and roll, it is kind of this teenage dream that we live in. You know what I mean? It's like, this kid playland, and it is hard for a lot to grow up in, and myself included. We all go through it. It's you're, especially I remember standing on stage with on Kiss's stage, and it's like, holy shit, it's like, oh, this Call Home to Mom moment. It's like, oh my God, I'm standing where Gene Simmons is going to be in an hour. You know what I mean? So there is that. It's like that was me as a freaking kid. 12, 13-year-old kid just go, oh my God, but being the servant, really, it certainly it's humbling for sure, but also you realize, man, you get a lot out of that, that the servant becomes the greatest, that it isn't just always having everyone serve you. In fact, that can be very unhealthy, and it stunts your growth, and you get trained that this is how the world is supposed to treat me, and that is not a reality, next thing you know, you're screaming at the girl at the front desk because she's not giving you your water or your Wi-Fi, or you know what I mean. You're the petulant child, as we've seen in all the movies. The pansy ass rock star, and I don't want to be that guy, So I've had these experiences in my lifetime that you're only supposed to get so far, and then it's like, okay, that's the cap. That's like the fun cap. The governor that says, yeah, that's you can't go past that. Now you got to go back down. It's like Candyland on the slide.
Oh, right.
Go back to the beginning of the game, and I think it's just that's what it's supposed to be. And it's like, it's okay. It's like, go back to the beginning of Candyland, start over.
I like that reference. My kids are young enough where I still have to play that occasionally.
I love that game. It's great.
Let's talk about the Lucid. Like you said earlier, this isn't like you're out of Megadeth, you're throwing a record together. You guys have been planning this for a while. So to kind of talk about Drew and Vinny and Mike, kind of getting all those guys together.
Yeah, well, so Drew hit me. In fact, I had just gotten done. Ironically, I was in Nashville playing bass on the new Megadeth album at that time. So my studio ears were on big time, and I'd come home. And we began the Ellefson no cover record, which was just kind of, again, I just kind of got home. I'm all like, I'm all amped up. And again, I've been doing the deep dive in the studio, recording. So I was like, let's keep going, getting this creative buzz. So we did the Ellefson no cover record, which was basically me just pulling out every song of my record collection that I was a fan of, right, from Bachman Turner Overdrive to Sweet and, all this stuff. So, that was a lot of fun. And then right at that time, Drew sent me the song Hair, the song that became Hair. He sent that over. He goes, hey, man, you want to play on something? Because, again, it's COVID. We're all home. No one's leaving. And I said, sure. So I put a bass track down to it. It was super fun. In fact, I just heard the demo of it the other day. Drew sent it around to us. And I had met Mike Heller before. In fact, he'd come through with Raven not too long before that, so we kind of hung out. And I know he's good friends with Dirk. They're kind of muso buddies, and and so Mike was, cool, and so I sent the track over, and Mike just said, "Listen, if we're going to get real about this, let's get over here to my studio in L.A. and plug into Pro Tools and get real about it." And right at that same time, Drew hit me. He said, "Dude, I'm going to hit up Vinny from Sponge." I'm like, "Oh my God, he'd be perfect on this." And I love Sponge. I mean, the '90s. The '90s was the radio rock era for us, for all of us metal guys. Well, not all of us metal guys, but the ones who I think who kind of survived the '90s.
Right.
We played the game, we just did. And our management at that time had really strongly urged, and that's essentially produced the Cryptic Writings and Risk album. Cryptic Writings, I think, being just dead on the money, really the right record for us, the right sound and everything. But I remember, that competitive spot to get into the top 20, then to get into the top 10, and then the top 5, and that just trying to hit number 1 at Active Rock Radio. Because at the time, there was something like 120 or 130 stations. It was a big format. I think there's like 30 now. It's tiny now. The format's super small. And of course, now today it's owned by, Godsmack, Disturbed, Shinedown, Hailstorm. You know what I mean? That's who owns that format now. But back in the day, Megadeth, we were in there, and Sponge was all over in there, and they were just one of those cool. Plow was the song that was the contender. It was just such a great song, cool. It had this just awesome kick-ass feeling about it, So to work with Vin, I thought was just so cool. And Vin is actually the picture on our Rockstar Hitman book. He's the
oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he was kind enough. I was like, dude, that guy's badass. I want to get to know him. Like, that's a real rock star right there. So I don't know, by I guess probably late July, early August, we convene over at Mike Heller's studio over in LA, and his home studio there, which is really cool, great setup. And I play bass. I just throw a bass in my car, and we were just working. We recorded like 10 tracks in like 2 days. It was a lot of work. But we were all there. Vin flew out from Detroit, and we're all hanging out. And we were impressed with Vin because he showed up with like sandwiches and drinks, again, being the servant. Like, dude, you're like a big rock star. You don't have to bring shit for us, and just. But I was like, that showed some down home cool. You know what I mean? Like, because he wasn't going to be singing. He was just there to hang out and said, hey, while we're here, let's take some pictures and do some photos and stuff. So, we kind of had it all set up and teed up, ready to go from there. And then Mike's buddy, Lassie, I think that's how you say it, from over in Germany, mixed the record, and I thought just did a great job. And Mike's a great producer, man. He's an awesome drummer, great producer. I like being produced. I have no problem with other band members or whoever the producer is. I have grown my most in my musical journey when someone else is producing me.
Right. Hey,
I like that thing you did there. Maybe go up another couple frets higher, and then after that, maybe add like a lick. And it's just though, because I just like that. I'm that guy. I like to collaborate on ideas. Even though I'm playing the bass, every note doesn't have to be my idea. It's and to sit with Drew in the room, with him guitar in hand, kind of going over, just kind of bending certain notes and getting that swagger in there. I listened to the demo versus to what we did, and I was like, man, thank goodness he was there. We were all there in the room and just kind of having a, cheerleader spirit, like, yeah, good job, man. Yeah, good take, and it was fun. I hate phoning records in, man. I just, if I did a podcast with Max Norman, ironically, and he talked about being a musical conversation, that when you're in the room, and we had that when we did the Euthanasia record, because we recorded all that live, that there's a conversation that happens. You can feel the drummer kind of leading up to a part where they goes into a fill and then into the chorus, and there's an energy that builds to that. And there's something that, other musicians play that inspire you to sort of turn a corner together. Right. And that's the conversation, it's like this right here versus you asking me questions and I'm talking to the wall. And then I send you my recording of this. We're in a conversation together, and there's nuances and it flows to different places. And musically, it's the same thing, and anybody who's in a band or plays with other musicians, that there's just a natural feeling that happens when you're all in the room together.
It's funny you were talking about being the artist rep at Peavey, and Peavey was Primary 55's. You were I think Bobby's rep from Primer, and I ended up with the bass gear from that stuff. And that Peavey bass gear was some of the best stuff that I've ever played through. And I know I got in a few bands just rolling that stuff in and plugging in, just like that's how great that stuff was.
Well, dude, I remember, so we were at Soundcheck in Nashville, right? And inside of Soundcheck, they have a bunch of artist relations offices, like there's Zildjian, Shure, Peavey had one. And at the time I was using, on the Euthanasia record, I used Ampeg gear. And as much as I love Ampeg, and it has its place for sure, it just was never the right sound inside of Megadeth. And I used it on Euthanasia because the songs were slower. They're big tubing. Tubes take a while to sort of the sound to develop and breathe, which is why I mostly use solid state amplification, because it's very quick, it's super fast and spontaneous. So I look in the Peavey office, and I noticed they've got these big 810 cabinets. I think it was their 810 TVX series. Yep. And they just had this brand new solid state head called the Kilo Bass, which is like this 1,000-watt solid state head. So I wheeled two of those in, two cabinets, and one of those heads in, and I swear it was on 2. And it was so loud. And so, like, I remember Dave and Marty, like, turn the fuck down. David always called me rumble fuck, because I'd always just like turn the bass up and the whole fucking place would be rattling, and he, and those guys like, fuck, turn down, Junior, what the hell, and I was like, yes, I have the guitar. I'm louder than the guitar players, which is very hard to do in a heavy metal band. And so that's why I used that Peavey stuff on Cryptic. I used it all the way through, till 2002, when things ground to a halt there, all the way through The World Needs a Hero and a lot, the Rude Awakening live DVD and stuff. So it just sounded so good, man. It's warm and thick. And, then they developed some other stuff that's, I used some of that as well during the 2000s. But yeah, they've always been a great bass company. In fact, it's funny. I went during my little off season, because I'm from Minnesota, I go to Dairy Queen once in a while, right? So there's a Dairy Queen by my house, and I'm sitting in the Dairy Queen in this parking lot, and I look across, and there's a guitar store in Scottsdale called, I think, the Guitar Gallery. And every time I go in there, I buy something. And so I was like, I looked over there, and I should go in there and see what they have. And sure enough, I walk in, and they had a Peavey T40 bass, an 81, in like great condition. And I called my friend John Accolino, who was from Icon, and I record a lot at his studio in Phoenix. And I call him up and go, dude, there's a T40 here for the price tag is $699. He goes, swipe the card. He goes, dude, they're going for like $1,200-$1,300 on Reverb right now. So I'm like, done. So and it's got a nice hard shell case. And it's funny because when I took a family vacation when I was like 15, my family went through like the South down into Florida. And I remember going into a music store in Atlanta, and they had when the Peavey T40 had just come out. I think they were Peavey's first guitar and bass, the T60 guitar, the T40 bass. And I remember my dad, I was there with him, and he asked me, he goes, it was $240 new at the time. And I remember like Ross Valerie from Journey was playing one, because they were kind of big Peavey guys in that day. And I liked it. It just sounded good. It was heavy, but it played well. It sounded good. And my dad asked me, he said, is that the bass you really want? And I said, well, actually what I really want is a BC Rich Mockingbird. He said, well, how much is that? And I went, $900. I was embarrassed to tell him. And he goes, well, look, I'll help you. Why don't we buy that one? Because that's the one you really want. Because if you spend $240 on this one, you're still going to want the $900 one. So spend your money once, buy right the first time. And that was an incredible lesson to learn from my dad about that. Just get what you really want. And so he helped me buy that. I bought it from Ed Roman when he still had East Coast Sound out in Connecticut. And I think that's the one I took to L.A. And then when I met Dave, he had a Rich bitch. And then when, Kerry King played with us, of course, he had BC Riches. So we were like the BC Rich army, and then, of course, Gar Samuelson, who became our drummer a couple years later, he was a general manager of BC Rich. So that's how we had access to all these awesome BC Riches. And, like the Firefighter one that I used in the P-Cells video that's now at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so it was, so anyway, nice BC Rich thread there. But here we are years later, I'm on vacation, if you will, and I buy a PVT 40, and I bought it home, and I have a couple little Marshall micro stacks. I went on like a little Marshall micro stack buying binge, and so I got a little back line of Marshalls in my house. You know, they're like 3 feet tall or whatever.
Right.
You know, Stonehenge, right? Spinal Tap. You know, the micro Marshalls, and so I just plug into that thing, and it's fun. I just sit and riff and play, and I find that with different instruments. You know, you get different instruments, and they inspire you in different ways, just different tones, different sounds.
100%.
Yeah, you know. So to me, I always said it's like guitars and basses. They have songs in them. You just need someone to pull them out. You know. So you know, it's fun to have a bunch of different stuff sitting around the house.
It's funny you talk about, you know, during COVID, you went to and recorded a record. You know, I fell down a David Ellefson bassline rabbit hole, and I was learning David Ellefson bass lines. I'm like, where did these come from, man? Like some of the little runs you do and stuff. I was just like, where, you know, it's just not A-B metal. It's like there's a lot more musicality in there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. You know, the thing I think is I grew up, you know, I'd taken piano lessons, and I played tenor saxophone in the little, you know, junior or not, you know, elementary band, you know. So I kind of knew music, so I kind of self-taught myself on bass a little bit. And then I started taking lessons just anywhere I could. I mean, again, I grew up in a, so I, you know, the church guitar player, the third grade band teacher, like anybody who had any knowledge of the bass, I just soaked all of it up. And I got asked to play in jazz band. I was always the youngest guy getting asked to join bands, you know. I guess even Megadeth, I was only 18 at the time, and everybody else was older than me. You know, even in, you know, growing up in Jackson, Minnesota, you know, I was 12, and the 16-year-olds would ask me to join their band, you know, and I was, you know, in junior high, and the senior high bass player quit jazz band, so they asked me to come and play. And so those, you know, those settings to play with older guys who were more experienced, you know, I got good pretty quick because I was into it, and for whatever reason, the good Lord wanted me to play the bass, and, you know, he obviously gave me a skill for it, you know, but he, you know, it's funny how I'd always get called up to play with older guys, and that forced me to grow, not just how to play, but how to listen, sort of how to behave, you know, like step it up, you know what I mean? Like it always raised the bar for me, you know. So, you know, by the time, you know, I kind of got the, you know, and then I gigged around a lot. I always had bands, you know, through my teenage years. We'd always go play around the ballrooms and stuff in Minnesota and Iowa and South Dakota and stuff. So I was out.
We'll finish up on a couple of things. I did want to hit on the Nick Menza movie that they're putting out, and I know you're a part of it now. So I mean, kind of talk to me about what they're doing and what your involvement is.
You know, my whole thing with that with Nick, you know, it was such a obviously controversial. You know, look, first and foremost, Nick has been a great friend to me. You know, he was there for me when I was turning the corner out of my drug days into getting sober. He's, you know, and you know, obviously just he was a fun guy, man. He would just say the most outrageous things. Like he would literally say things like, you know, be on the bus and he would just say outrageous things like Jesus was a holograph and, you know, alien stories. And
right.
He'd go, you know, I'm just going to fucking blow up on stage and fucking, I'm out of here. You know, that's why when he died on stage, I was like, dude, nice one. Like you pulled it off, dude. Not, you know, he got the last laugh, you know, and I don't mean that in any disrespect.
Right. No,
when I inducted him into the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame and his family was there, I said the same thing. I said, if you knew Nick, you wouldn't be sad about that. You'd be going, dude, what a rock star move, you know.
But you don't want to die at a club called the Baked Potato, though. That's the only part of the story.
Tell you what, dude, if you're in the jazz world, that is the cool play. That's like playing L'Amour's or the Ritz back in the day, you know. That's their CBGBs, you know what I mean? Like that's like the cool place. And you know, Chris Poland gave me the play-by-play on that, and I was just like, wow. I mean, he, you know, I guess Nick had some heart issues and some stuff that he was dealing with at the time. He always liked to eat tons of freaking red meat, so I don't know if that's what it was. He had, you know, we get a little older, get into our 50s, and we got to start watching that stuff. But look, he was the beloved one of our franchise for sure. You know, people just loved Nick. He was a lovable guy, likable guy, amazing rock star drummer. I mean, he got on that kit, and he just, you know, we'd go out at different times. We'd either use that iced tea intro tape or whatever.
Right.
And, you know, we'd all have our entry points, and he'd come up and he'd fold his sticks up in the sign of like the cross, and, you know, seemed to be yelling stuff like the power of Christ compels you, or, you know, whatever he's yelling out of his mouth at the time. And, you know, the Exorcist kind of stuff. So, you know, he was just that guy. And, you know, if I think for me, my involvement in the film is just to kind of help keep the story on path. You know, there's an actual director and people that are really kind of the nuts and bolts of putting it all together. But my thing is kind of more to try to maybe have a little bit of the oversight committee, if you will, you know, to just pull it together, because there's friends that want to say the story should go this way. You know, obviously his family deserves all the respect of this, and for his mom and dad, Don and Rose, to, you know, to at the end of their life, you know, to know, like, you know, this was a great honorarium to their son, you know, and that's what it's all about. It's just all for their family. And, you know, their family have been very gracious to me as well. You know, they used to sit in Nick's backyard and have barbecues and stuff. And with his friend, you know, Nick was the kind of guy, you'd go over to his house, you just walk in. Like, people didn't even knock. You just walk in. And it's like Seinfeld, you know, people just walking in left and right. And that, it's funny, that's how I grew up on the farm. We left our keys in the car, the door unlocked. People just walk in. There was always a pot of coffee, and people would sit down and have hours of discussion, you know, sitting around the kitchen table. So I think Nick and his family reminded me of that in California, because the years up until I met Nick were not that. They were more guarded. I had to learn how to kind of live very guarded in a very hustle bustle city over in Hollywood, over the hill. And Nick lived over in the valley and North Hollywood, and it just felt much more down home, very, very much a family, the Menzas are, you know. So if I can bring that at all and kind of help, again, just keep that storyline true to at least the 10 years that you know, probably about 12 years that I knew Nick, first as a tech and then playing in the band. You know, if I can do that, it's my honor, you know, to be part of that.
Did you know a lot of this footage existed? Do you remember him running around with the camera and all? And all that time?
I've watched a bunch of it, and I'm like, oh my God, here we are pulling up in the bus, like in Germany or wherever. And, you know, I remember there's the sensei we had on tour. There's Mike Bruton, our security guy, who has now since passed. Skip Rickard, our tour manager, you know, and then, you know, even some of the footage. There's a lot of footage of Pantera, because in Europe in '92, on the Countdown to Extinction tour, Pantera was our support act. And those guys were so much fun. You know, band and crew on the same bus. Those guys knew how to keep themselves entertained. They were always like making movies, and Dime would play the music to it. And, you know, they're doing it on, like, you know, high 8, Super 8 cameras and stuff. And they were a lot of fun. So it's fun. I've been enjoying just kind of watching some of the Pantera footage, because, you know, Nick would go front of house and film them playing, you know, different songs. So that would have been up to Vulgar Display for Pantera. Yeah. And most of the songs they played were for Vulgar and Cowboys from Hell. And they would never play Cemetery Gates. We would always bug them. You guys, that's like one of your best songs. Please play it. So finally, the last night of the tour in Holland, they finally played the freaking song. And it was great. It was so cool to see them play it. I think they thought it was kind of like too lightweight for them, like it was a ballad. And it's like, it doesn't matter. It's a freaking great song, man. So it was cool that we finally pulled it out of them, you know, and they finally played it. So, yeah, but there's great stuff. And just to see how spry and sort of sassy Nick was, you know, because he definitely, he knew how to walk into a room and light it up. You know, when Nick walked in, people paid attention. You know, he truly was an entity. You know.
You know, it's funny. I'll either cut this out or it'll be a funny story. But you talking about you being in Nashville. You know, I grew up in Nashville, played in bands in Nashville, and in '96, you guys are in town recording Cryptic Writings. Mm-hmm. I'm like 17. Me and my friends are out flyering one night. It's like a Sunday night. We're out stapling flyers on poles. And there's a guy that walks up behind us and's like, "Hey, are you guys in a band?" But he's still behind me, so I'd never turned around, because you get that a lot. You guys did a band, you know, what do you guys sound like? Blah blah. So I didn't even turn around. So and Bill Clinton is in town campaigning, so we can't cross the street because the presidential motorcade's going by. So we're stuck. And so this guy's talking, and I finally turn around, and it's Marty Friedman. And like my two bandmates didn't like, they knew he was somebody, but they didn't know who he was. And I was like, oh my God, it's Marty Freeman. Like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I'm staying at this hotel across the street. And, you know, and we played
Hampton Inn. I remember I had my neck hurt for a month after staying in that hotel.
And we were at the Mrs. Winters across the street. And yeah, he was standing there. He's like, yeah, we're in town recording a record, man. It was a crazy interaction with
you can't miss Marty in that hair. You know what I mean? Right. It's like, you know, I tell you, Cryptic was a great period of my life, of our band. I think, you know, there was a very optimistic feeling coming down here. And I remember we played, I think it was the Disintegrators was like the last song we played at because we were at soundcheck and we did pre-production for a few days there with Dan Huff, dropping in, going over the songs with us. Right. And the songs were pretty much written. We'd done it. We spent a lot of time in Phoenix where we lived, writing the record. Our managers, Mike Renault, and then the senior partner, Bud Prager, you know, kind of really helping, just sort of soundboarding more than anything on the writing. Like, that's good. I don't know about that. We need, you know, if we can really, and the intention on that record, I think, was like, right, 4 radio songs, 4 metal tracks, and then 4 kind of do whatever you want kind of thing, you know, to get the 12 songs. And I remember, you know, being here. I think the Disintegrators was the last song we played for Dan. He was laughing his ass off. He thought we were joking. Like, he thought we were, like, kidding. We're like, no, dude, that song's going on the record. He's like, what? Man, y'all are crazy. You know, and Dad is such a sweet guy and his Southern accent, you know, but working with Dan was great. I mean, we were fans of him. He was a little almost starstruck with him because he had his band Giant that me and Dave were big fans of. And we'd seen him play at the Roxy in Hollywood, I guess, probably 89, early 90. And it's funny, Pauly Shore opened for him. It's the first time I'd ever seen a comedian open for a rock band. And God, Pauly was so freaking funny. And, but yeah, to work with Dan, I mean, man, talk about raising the bar. I mean, for all of us. I mean, that guy, he'd only produced the Lone Star record, and then we were his second production. He was still working. He was still side gunning sessions on the side because he was transitioning out of being a guitar, you know, a session guitar player where he, you know, had a highly respected first call guy, to go from that over into producing. So just I think to kind of make the financial and professional transition, he'd run over, bang out a session real quick, or he'd play 1 in the morning, and then he'd come in and start editing drums and working on the record with us, you know. But yeah, super, super great experience. And I think we really hit the mark with that record too. It's very cool.
Too much fun. All right. So the final question is, you know, what's coming up for Dave Ellefson, man? You're dipping your toe back into getting out, and the Lucid going to do shows, and, you know, you're going to do, you know, the horror conventions, things like that. Because the movie's great, by the way. Dwellers is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I know I asked Drew, I said, shouldn't Lucid be like the soundtrack? And he goes, it's a found footage movie. There wouldn't be a soundtrack to a found footage. I was like, all right, I learn something new every day. I guess you're right. That makes sense. So, so, you know, honestly, I've learned over the years, man, you just take it a day at a time. You know, I mean, you really do. Out of nowhere, an email shows up. Hey, do you want to do this? A phone call comes in. Stuff comes out of left field. And I learned that from a tour manager buddy of ours years ago, Steve Wood. You know, 'cause I was like, God, you crew guys, man, like, you come off of a big tour. Like, how do you get your next job to go on? And he just said, he goes, you know, I've learned that an email shows up, a phone call comes in, usually right at the last minute, and then you know what you're going to do next. And so I just kind of learned to roll like that in our business, you know, because that kind of is how life works anyway. You know, look, you certainly let people know you're available, and I am, of course, you know, and people have, I think, kind of learned to know that about me, you know, even though I've kind of had, you know, the anchor gig over the years. You know, there's always been time to go out and do other things, and there's been other creative seasons to do things with other records and other things. So yeah, you know, just kind of letting things flow as they will.
You know, Kerry King and Paul Bostoff putting a band together, so they probably need a bass player.
That's a pretty good idea, actually. I don't know.
Give them a call. All right.
Break out our BC Riches again, I guess.
There you go. Well, Dave, man, it's been a blast as always, and always great to catch up with you.
Thanks, Joshua. Appreciate it, man. See ya.